I'm going to talk about concealed carry laws, and I'm going to start off with a story. In April 2012 in downtown Salt Lake City, there was a man named Crafton Lai, I think is how you pronounce it, walked into a Smith's Marketplace grocery store, purchased a kitchen knife from the cooking department. He then left the store, waited just outside. He took out the knife he had just purchased from the store and attacked a 30-year-old man, stabbing him in the abdomen several times. He then attacked another man, 45 years old, stabbing him in the head and then his arms as he put his arms up to block the attack. After attacking his second victim, he turned to see a large crowd of potential victims. He moved toward them, ready to attack. I'm going to come back to this story. I want to tell you about our Second Amendment right to bear arms and how concealed carry reduces crime and saves lives. So let's talk about some of the myths about concealed carry. One of the first myths, myth number one, is that concealed carry laws increase crime. According to a study that spanned 1980 to 2009, homicides committed with a gun were 10% higher in states with very strict concealed carry laws. When concealed carry was passed into law in Florida, the homicide rate in that state fell from 36% above to 4% below the national average. It remains below the national average as of the last reporting period in 2005. In the first year after concealed carry was passed in Texas, murder rates fell 50% faster than the national average. Rape fell even faster the first year at a rate of 93% faster and 500% faster the second year. Assault dropped incredibly fast as well at a rate of 250% faster the second year. Illinois just passed a concealed carry law in July 2013, the last state in the country to do so. In Chicago, there were 6 fewer murders in the first 3 months of this year than in the first 3 months of 2013, a drop of 9%. And 55 fewer murders than in 2012. The murder rate in Chicago in 2013 was the lowest the city has seen since 1958. The city of Chicago saw 90 less shootings, 26% less, and 119 less victims of shootings, 29% less in the first 3 months of this year than in 2013. There were 222 less shootings and 292 less shooting victims in that same time frame in 2012. The second myth is that people with concealed weapons permits will commit crimes. In Texas, statistics show that people without concealed carry permits are 5.7 times more likely to be arrested for committing a violent crime and 13.5 times more likely to be arrested for committing a nonviolent crime than those who have obtained a concealed carry permit. And that statistic is from 1999. In Florida, where they have allowed concealed carry for the last 27 years, you're twice as likely to be attacked by an alligator than you are by someone with a concealed carry permit. In Oregon, only 4 people out of 14,000, which is a percentage of 0.04%, concealed carry permit holders were convicted of the criminal, not necessarily violent use of or possession of their guns. Out of 11 million concealed carry permit holders in the entire U.S., a statistic taken in 2001, 0.004% have committed murder. So the third myth that I want to talk about is concealed carry laws will lead to mass public shootings. That the number of multiple victim or mass public shootings drops in states that pass shall issue concealed carry laws. And concealed carry permit holders have permitted or shortened many mass shootings by being prepared on a number of occasions. Some of these include the Pearl High School shooting in Pearl, Mississippi in 1997, the New Life Church shooting in Colorado Springs, Colorado in 2007, the Parker Middle School dance shooting in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania in 1998, and the Players Bar and Grill shooting in Winnemucca, Nevada, I believe is how you pronounce it, in 2008. So now let's return to the story I started at the beginning. Crafton Lai had already wounded 2 people that day, and he was on his way to injure dozens more. The police had been called, but they wouldn't be there for several more minutes. And people who had just watched Crafton stab 2 people looked on as helpless waiting victims, except they weren't all helpless. One man had legally obtained a concealed carry permit and had his handgun concealed on his person that day. He drew his firearm and ordered the man to drop the knife and lay on the ground. No one else was injured, and employees of the store held down Crafton until police arrived and arrested him. The 2 people who were stabbed were expected to survive. The data all over the country consistently shows that when men like these legally have concealed weapons, crime goes down. These are real lives we can save. Thank you.
All right, I want to make a direct statement in reference to the story with Crafton Lai. If the first man that had been attacked had a concealed carry weapon on him, and he comes at him with a knife, in every law enforcement agency as well as military, there's one thing that you're going to hear, and that's get back to your tools. So let's say he has a concealed weapon or a concealed firearm on him. Man attacks him. He still has to deal with the problem in front of him, which is the knife. Get space, and then if you haven't drawn your weapon 1,000,000 times in that situation, you're not going to cleanly pull that weapon from a concealed carry holster to be able to defend yourself. So if both men don't know how to deal with the problem at hand, first of all, they're not going to be able to get to their weapons anyways. So does it help them that they have a concealed carry weapon on them? Would that have saved them? They'd have still been stabbed because evidently they can't deal with the problem in front of them, and that's a man with a weapon or a man with a knife. So I wanted to make a direct statement to that. The second statement I wanted to make in rebuttal is a lot of the stats and the idea that all these numbers pertain to the idea that concealed carry protects people, that all these numbers drop. And we go to Florida, right? Numbers drop. Well, let's look at special weapons and tactics units in Florida, the highest trained in the country. So every special weapons and tactics SWAT team in America goes down to Miami-Dade County to train with these men. Does this pertain to the protection of the individuals within Florida, these highly trained men that can defend the citizens? I think so. If we're talking about all these numbers, what are they vacant of? Vacant of the measures that law enforcement takes to protect people, vacant of anything that has to do with what is law enforcement doing to take violent criminals off the street as well as weapons. So if I don't have those two things and I'm thinking all these numbers are pertaining to concealed carry protects people or keeps people protected, I can't believe that. Now, if you're going to have a concealed carry weapon, there's one thing that you need. You need a clear understanding of escalation of violence, which is not even thought of. If you think of George Zimmerman, escalation of violence, right? George Zimmerman, and I'm paraphrasing, George Zimmerman follows a 17-year-old kid, gets into a fight with him, says he was bouncing his head off of the concrete, but still has the wherewithal to get to his weapon to shoot the kid. All right, last time I checked, when you're talking about self-defense, the defense has to match the threat. Unarmed kid, 17 years old, 6'2", 180 pounds, bouncing a 250-pound grown man's head off the pavement, but he has the wherewithal to get to a weapon to shoot the kid. Is that a clear self-defense case there? Did he have the right to defend himself in that situation with a firearm? Now, let me flip the story for you. 300-pound Samoan guys walk up and have a problem with George Zimmerman. I expect him to pull his weapon and go condition 1, because in that situation, yes, he has to meet a threat of multiple opponents against him and has a weapon to protect himself. So if he goes condition 1, tells them to stop, they don't stop, they keep coming, they shoot him. Hey, listen, 3 against 1, that's not mutual combat. The last thing that I want to touch on is understanding that please bear with me. The last thing I want to talk about is understanding violence and the mistake of thinking there's violence. This is a second Florida case with Michael Dunn. Michael Dunn had done the same thing. He heard three kids in a SUV. They were playing music. Asked them to stop playing the music. They turned it down. They drive up the street. They turn it back up. Right? Gets in his car. He goes up to him and gets into an argument with them. And then he says he saw a shotgun in the back. Unloads a whole clip into the car, killing 1 kid, wounding 2. Was there any shotgun in the weapon in the vehicle? No. Thought he saw. There were many things he could have done to alleviate the situation. He could have hit reverse if he thought they had a gun. He could have used his vehicle as a shield or a weapon. But no, he went to his glove compartment and unloaded a whole clip on what he thought he saw. This is the danger. And this is what I'm talking about. When you get into any industry, you're going to hear one statement. 10 attaboys don't equal 1. What does that mean? That means that 10 things that you do right, 10 people that do the right thing, that one person that screws it up for the bunch. Now, the statement that I want to make and allow him to rebut on is semi-automatic rifles and submachine guns have no place in residential neighborhoods and should be banned depending on where your location is. And let me elaborate on that. If you live in Montana, if you live in some place where there's 1,100-pound wild boars, I expect you to have a semi-automatic rifle bored out to a 308 for a 308 round 7.62. It's a big round. It's going to travel 800 meters per second. But let's put it in context. Your neighbors are probably 10 miles away from you. It makes sense. If there's a grizzly bear on your property, you need to take that grizzly bear down. I get it. Have a semi-automatic weapon that's powerful enough to get the job done. That makes sense. But if we're talking about semi-automatic weapons in residential neighborhoods as home protection, that means know that target and what lies beyond. I shoot you with an M4 carbine, caliber .223, also 5.56, travels 3,000 feet per second, which means at a point target, it drops somebody from 400 to 440 meters. Now, what does that mean? That means that if somebody's in your house, breaks into your house, you shoot that person with that weapon at that close range, that bullet's not staying in them. Promise you. You're hitting somebody else's kid, somebody else's wife. It's going through walls. There are special rounds that deliver all the energy on contact, but are these rounds available to civilians? Not likely. And rounds are very, very expensive. People aren't going to buy these rounds. So at the end of the day, the last thing I want to leave you with is Stanley A. McChrystal, right? He was the commander of JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. These are the most brilliant, talented, aggressive shooters in the world, right? He himself said, these weapons that we use have no place in our society. I'm not going that far, but this is what he's saying. Now, this man has trained himself on a variety of weapons and trained other men in a variety of weapons as well, and says, hey, listen, this is too much. Understand that the men that he deals with are doing this day in, day out with live rounds. So that means, is there training accidents? They shoot each other? Yes, definitely. But what civilian's going to take the time to train themselves to that degree, to be able to handle and manipulate the weapon that they have? It's not going to happen. So let's go ahead and remove that. Let's instill a clear understanding of what escalations of violence is, what self-defense is. If that is violated, boom, it's a felony, period. No and ifs or buts about it. Make it clear.
Sorry, on Monday we were talking about, or the thing that I was going to rebut from him was talking about, semi-automatic rifles and submachine guns not having any place in an urban setting and things like that. They not really being effective weapons for self-defense in your home and things like that. I thought we were going to do this on Monday, so I'm not as prepared as I thought I was going to be. But the first thing I just wanted to talk about is that as far as according to the crime statistics from the FBI, you can go on the FBI's website and there's crime statistics on there. And it tells you how many murders or homicides were committed with different weapons and things like that. So in 2012, with they're called personal weapons. This means hands, fists, feet. Somebody beat somebody to death with their bare hands or feet or whatever. There were 678 of that in 2012. Blunt objects such as clubs, hammers, a baseball bat, something like that, there was 518. Knives or any other cutting instruments, there was 1,589. And then rifles of any kind was 322. So of fists, baseball bats, knives and cutting instruments, and assault rifles, they have the lowest amount of homicides. And things like that. So really an outright ban of assault rifles for civilians and things like that, regardless of where you live, it's not going to deter crime. It's not going to really, decrease murders and things like that. Granted, yeah, I think people should get training and things like that, and it's probably not the best thing to use an AR-15 to, gun down a bad guy in your house because you might go through the wall and shoot somebody across the street and stuff like that. But a lot of people really enjoy using them for sport, things like that. There's things called 3-gun competitions where you shoot a handgun, shotgun, and some kind of semi-automatic rifle and things like that. It's and the other thing I wanted to touch on about that is banning any certain kind of weapon, within reason. Obviously, somebody's shouldn't be allowed to make a nuclear bomb in their garage or whatever. But within reason, it'd be the same thing as banning, or deciding what kind of books we can read, with the First Amendment, things like that. It'd be like, if we banning assault rifles would be the exact same thing as saying you can only read this book, you can't read this book, and stuff like that. You can only, say this, you can't say that. things like that with the First Amendment. I think most people would agree that, we shouldn't do that. So that's all I had to say about the assault rifle thing. There's one other thing I wanted to read about the concealed carry, stuff like that. I definitely agree with Branson talking about people needing to get training and things like that, and that just carrying a gun doesn't mean you're going to be able to defend yourself. You need to be able to know how to use that. But there's an article I read here on democraticunderground.com that says 10 things everyone should know about concealed weapons permit holders. I'll just read a few because it'll take me forever to read all of these. But the first one says, we don't carry firearms so that we can ignore other basics of personal safety. Every permit holder that I know realizes that almost all dangerous situations can be avoided by vigilance, alertness, and simply making wise choices about where one goes and what one does. We don't walk down dark alleys. We lock our cars. We don't get intoxicated in public or hang out around people who do. We park our cars in well-lighted spots and don't hang out in bad parts of town where we have no business. A gun is our last resort, not our first. There was one other one that I wanted to read, talking about the fact that number 8 on this list is the fact that we carry a firearm to any given place does not mean that we believe that place to be inherently unsafe. If we believe a place to be unsafe, most of us would avoid that place altogether if possible. However, we recognize that trouble could occur at any place and at armed persons and at any time. Criminals do not observe gun-free zones. If trouble does come, we do not want the only armed persons to be perpetrators. Therefore, we don't usually make a determination about whether or not to carry it at any given time based on how safe we think the location is. For example, I usually carry a gun at church. Now, most people would say, not in this state. When I'm in a state where I have a permit, things like that. Now, most people would say, like at church, what bad guy's going to have, such a lack of conscience that he's going to go into church. Well, it has happened before. I've had a friend where that was told me about an incident that happened at a Mormon church where several bad guys came in and went row by row and robbed everybody in the church at gunpoint. So, just because we carry a gun somewhere doesn't mean we think that place is unsafe. It's just we just feel like we want to be prepared at all times. That's all I have. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Any questions for either one of us?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Why does a gun have to be concealed? If you want to carry a gun, why can't you just have it like on a shoulder so the rest of us can see you have a gun? Why must it be concealed?
Weapons shielding. So if you have a gun that you have access to,
carrying, yeah.
He has access to. So if I'm standing next to him, I'm a left-handed
Okay,
shooter. So if I have a gun then here, then the whole
Yeah.
way I walk and talk, I have to change because of weapons shielding. So concealed carry, he doesn't know.
Okay, but police carry their guns in the
They don't, and they do the same thing. Weapons. If a cop's
They have to be cognizant of how they're standing all the time because someone else
if
could
you
gain
open a
access to their
window
gun.
next to a guy with a gun, he's going to pull that gun and put it in your face, bro. Because you cannot have that access to the weapon.
Right,
So-
okay, I don't know, I still don't understand why it has to be concealed. If you want the responsibility of carrying a gun like a police officer, then fine, you have to change your...
Well, see, that's the whole thing. Is that one of the other things on there is that we don't think that we're cops or spies or superheroes or anything like that. It's a last resort thing to protect myself and my family and my property. Things like that. I'm not gonna jump in and help a crowd of people. Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, I'm not gonna jump in and help a crowd of people unless maybe I think I have tactical advantage.
And one
or something
thing,
like that.
we'll get to your question, but one thing, like even with the church incident, if you have a weapon on you and there's multiple assailants with weapons,
I'm not gonna take on 10 guys.
you can't.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not
Maybe
gonna
if me and 10 other guys at church are all carrying them, we practiced or something,
Yeah.
for situations like that. But
Jason
not
Bourne
likely.
shouldn't
So.
exist.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the original purpose of establishing that in the Constitution was so that we could protect ourselves as a nation from invading nations, which most people we don't have a weapon, and to protect ourselves against an invading nation, we would need some type of firearm, a lot of firearms. Most of us don't, so it's the few against however many people, get dropped in like Red Dawn,
we had talked about that for a minute because people always use that. They say it's my Second Amendment right to defend myself if the government goes awry, right? And or if I'm invaded by another nation. The only problem with that is that if an untrained shooter goes against a real shooter, you will lose every single time. So what is it? I mean, besides 4 pounds being, placed on you, the idea is great, but the ability for civilians to get the training necessary to be able to defend themselves with a weapon, it just doesn't happen. And what you're talking about, I think it was a Japanese general who said, invading America is crazy because behind every blade of grass.
Behind every blade of grass. Yeah.
And so, in essence, yes. But the thing is, you have a lot of retired individuals who have experience with manipulating these weapons and then shooting, moving, and communicating with each other on a basic level. So if you take a guy from the Navy and the Marine Corps on a basic level in terms of shooting, moving, and communicating, they can do no matter, and it's because they've done it thousands upon thousands of times. But the idea that if I have a weapon and somebody invades, I'm better off. If that individual is trained, I'm sorry, I've seen it firsthand. Yeah. It doesn't work.
Well,
I think you're going to lose.
That is made by a lot of people.
Because I think you're going to lose every time if you don't have a gun.
Second Amendment people that is to protect us from the government. If the government, what are you going to do? They show up with a tank. You're going to be able to.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you're going to live. But if it, if you're going to, I'd say maybe not every time, maybe 999 times out of 1,000. But you've got no chance if you don't even have the gun at all. You know what I mean? So like, if at least it gives me
government against, I just don't see it.
Against trained shooters. I mean,
are there requirements to get some kind of training to get a permit to carry a concealed weapon?
Yes. Anywhere you need to get
different
states have different laws. California is every state allows concealed carry, but there's several states that have what's called may issue. If it's shall issue, that means if you're legally allowed to own guns, then they're going to give you a permit. But if it's may issue, then it's up to the discretion of the police department or the sheriff's department, depending on where you live and stuff like that. So if you live in a city, you have to go to the chief of police. If you live in an unincorporated area of a county, you can go straight to the head
In New
sheriff.
York, you have to show cause. Like if you own a business,
you need a special reason.
If you have a business and you're in a bad neighborhood, or you're actually just that. If you're late at night, whatever.
You carry payroll for your company.
I owned a bar, and they told me I could get a gun if I wanted.
But you have to put so many hours in.
There's usually at least like an 8-hour class, and then they usually make you shoot at a target, make sure you're not that you can at least hit a silhouette target standing in a range and stuff like that. Which doesn't mean you're going to be able to perform in the real world, by the way. But they do make you shoot, and they do give you like an 8-hour class. Yeah.
You had a statistic on the murders that occurred with different weapons. You had only was a rifle.
Yeah, rifles of any kind, semi-automatic, bolt action, all that stuff.
Do you have any kind of statistic on handguns?
Yeah, handguns outnumbers all of them. So, I mean, I'm just saying that, banning, because I was addressing the assault rifle ban thing. So, but yeah, handguns in 2012 was 6,371. So it outnumbers all of them together, but.
And also with the rifles, you know how much a semi-automatic rifle costs, or a high-powered rifle? You have to have the funds necessary to be able to procure that weapon. It's another reason of why the numbers would be down, because these aren't being passed down from father to son. In terms of if it's a crime of passion or something like that, oh yeah, you can beat somebody senseless. You can kill them with the friggin' chair. If that's going to be the highest number of incidences when people lose their life, it makes sense. Your hands and fists are always attached to you, and they cost nothing.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I mean, you can look at the crime rates of places that have, where they let a lot of, like say, as Arizona compared to California, like people don't commit crimes as much because you don't know who's armed, You don't want to go rob a convenience store because there might be half a dozen people in there with guns that are going to defend that convenience store, and stuff like that. So just the fact that criminals don't know who's got a gun decreases crime. You can give me any kind of statistics or studies that show the other way, but if an armed society is a polite society, period. So that's all I have. Any other questions? Thank you.